Just imagine, a 5-year-old scarily accurately describing his own death, as if he had lived every second of that tragedy. This is exactly what happened on a night of September 2023, in the heart of Colonia Roma Norte, Mexico City. Yolanda Herrera woke up startled, her heart fired, dragged by her daughter's distressing screams, "Luciana!" It was not the common cries of a children's nightmare, they were words loaded with a terror that no child should know. The damp air of dawn stuck to the skin as Yolanda ran barefoot through the cold corridor of the apartment. Luciana's screams cut silence like blades. As he opened the bedroom door, he found the girl sitting on the bed, eyes closed, but her hands extended to the ceiling, as she begged for something invisible. Hector, helps me," the voice interspersed with despair. "I can't move. Sophia, where are you?" "Sophia?" Yolanda lit the light with trembling fingers. His daughter's face shone with sweat, the fists clenched as if they held something that only she saw. Tears ran down his children's cheeks, but his eyes remained closed. "Wake up, my love, it was just a bad dream," Yolanda whispered, touching her shoulder carefully. Luciana suddenly opened her eyes, as she woke up from a trance. For a moment, he looked at his mother as if he didn't recognize her. His breathing was panting, as if he had run miles. "Mom," he said with a broken voice, "had a lot of dust, I couldn't breathe." The Hector shouted, "But I didn't see him." "I saw nothing." A cold shiver descended through Yolanda's spine. Hector? Sophia? Those names had never been mentioned at home. There were no children with these names at Luciana's school, nor among the relatives. "Who are Hector and Sophia, my daughter?" he asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Luciana stared at her with those deep brown eyes for such a young child. "They are my work friends, mother. We were together when everything collapsed." "Work? A 5-year-old girl talking about work?" Yolanda hugged her daughter, feeling the small body shake between her arms. The smell of childish fear mixed with something more, a strange presence, as if other people's memories had invaded that room. "It was just a nightmare, my love. It has passed," he tried to reassure, but Luciana walked away lightly, with a look that did not belong to a child. It was the look of who had witnessed the worst. "It wasn't a dream, mother. I was there." The building swayed nonstop, and then everything fell. There was a lady crying and a man with blood on her head. Luciana touched her forehead. "Here. He had blood here." Yolanda felt the air miss. His daughter described scenes of destruction with clarity that no child should have. "And the most disturbing was the naturalness with which I was talking, as if revolving something that had really happened." "When was that, my angel?" he asked, the voice almost a whisper. "It's been a long time, mother. When I was big and worked in an office with very high windows. I liked to see the trees on my table." Yolanda's heart was hitting so hard that she was sure Luciana could hear. His daughter had never worked in an office, had never seen the world of high windows. They lived in a ground-floor apartment, and Luciana had turned 5 in the previous month. That night, Yolanda couldn't close his eyes. He woken up, listening to his daughter's quiet breath in the next room, as her words echoed in her mind, "Hector, Sophia, everything collapsed." She did not know, but that nightmare was just the first indication of a tragedy buried under the streets of Mexico City, a tragedy 38 years earlier, on September 19, 1985, when the earth trembled and swallowed thousands of lives in seconds. In the following days, Yolanda tried to maintain the routine: wake up at 6, prepare a pan with cinnamon, take Luciana to Montessori school at Rua Orizaba and follow to work on the accounting of a small fabric factory. But as he moved the sugar in the clay cup, he couldn't take his eyes off his daughter. Luciana ate her quesadillas pumpkin flour with the same innocence as usual, played with the dolls, laughed when her father, Carlos, tickled her before going to the mechanical workshop. Everything seemed normal, too normal, as if the screams of that night were just a hallucin. Yolanda action. Perhaps it was just a very alive dream, he repeated herself as she drove down the central axis. Children have a lot of imagination. But calm lasted exactly 6 days. On Tuesday afternoon, while Yolanda prepared tortilla soup on the stove, Luciana ran from the room with a paper in her hand. "Look, Mom. I drew my other family. Said proudly, extending the sheet. Yolanda dropped the wooden spoon in the pan. In the drawing, it wasn't her, Carlos and Luciana. Instead, three adult figures, a woman with long hair and blue dress, a man in a red tie and another smaller woman with glasses. Who are they, my love? He asked, trying to disguise the tremor in his voice. They are Sofia, Hector and Dona Carmen, said Luciana, as if it were obvious. We worked together on the 11th floor. Carmen always carried oat cookies to Fridays. Another shiver traveled Yolanda. The same names, now with one more, Carmen. And where did you work, my daughter? Luciana climbed into a chair to get her glass of water. In a very high building, near the cathedral. There was a lot of windows, and my table I saw the park trees. I liked to arrive early not to get the full elevator. The words came out of the girl's mouth with a terrifying naturalness. His 5-year-old daughter was talking about elevators, working hours, and office colleagues like an adult recalling her routine. Yolanda felt the floor disappear under his feet. Something was very wrong, and she was about to find that Mexico City kept much deeper secrets than imagined. Yolanda felt the air escape from his lungs as if he had punched his stomach. The hand of Luciana, small, wet of sweat, squeezed hers with a force that did not match her delicate fingers. It was not possible. It could not be coincidence. Those words, that gesture, the accuracy with which the girl pointed to the building, was all too much to be the result of a childish imagination or forgotten television show. Me love. Yolanda tried to keep his voice firm, but the words came out. How do you know the elevator was? How do you remember the floor number? Luciana did not deflect her eyes from the building. His expression was such an intense concentration that it seemed that at any time the concrete walls would open to reveal a secret kept for decades. Because I climbed every day, he said, as if he was explaining something obvious. And sometimes the elevator took time, so I told the floors while waiting. The 11 was mine. She paused, and her lips trembled slightly. Only one day. One day he didn't stop at 11. Yolanda felt his legs weakened. That was not the voice of a 5-year-old child. It was the voice of someone who had lived something so traumatic that terror still echoed in each syllable. She knelt on the sidewalk, ignoring the hasty people, the sellers who shouted their offers, the noise of the cars on Avenida Madero. He needed to look into his daughter's eyes. I needed to see. Luciana, listen to me, he said, holding the girl's face between her hands. You're safe now. Nothing will happen. But tell me, what else do you remember? Luciana's eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of a child scared with a nightmare. They were tears of someone who knew. I remember the noise, he whispered. First it was a creak, as if the building was tired. Then it all started to swing. Things fell from the tables. The papers flew. Sofia shouted. The Hector tried to hold the door, but she swallowed hard. Everything was black. And when I woke up, I was me. Yolanda closed his eyes for a second, trying to sue. Sofia. Hector. The same names as the drawing. The same names your daughter should not know. And Carmen? He asked, not knowing why that question came out of his mouth, as if it had been pulled by a major force. Luciana lowered her head. His finger drew a circle on the floor, as if writing something invisible. Carmen didn't shout, she murmured. She just prayed. A chill traveled Yolanda's spine. It wasn't just a story. It was not just a child repeating something he heard. It was real. And suddenly she knew, with a certainty that she froze her to her bones, that building kept more than concrete and steel. Kept them. Kept her. When Yolanda looked up again, he noticed something he had not seen before, a discreet sign, almost hidden between the commercial room rental ads. Nueva Vida building, inaugurated in 1978. And below, in smaller letters, almost erased by time, rebuilt over the ruins of the former Esperanza building, 1985. 1985. The year of the earthquake. The year thousands died. The year in which integer buildings collapsed in seconds. The year when, according to the newspapers Yolanda had read years ago, an office building near the cathedral was noised with dozens of people inside. She got up from a jump, dragging Luciana with her. I couldn't stay there. Not now. Not with her daughter shaking in her arms, as if the past were about to swallow them both. Let's go, said the voice broken by the urgency. Let's go now. But as they walked away, Yolanda failed to avoid one last look back. And he swore for everything that was sacred, that, for a second, behind those dark windows of the 10th first floor, saw something move. As if someone was looking at them. As if someone was waiting. Yolanda hesitated, his fingers squeezing the handle of the bag where he kept the printed page as if it were a forbidden confession. The afternoon light fell oblique over the courtyard of the kinder, painting long shadows on the faces of the children who ran between shouts of joy. Everything seemed so normal. So safe. But she knew that, under that routine facade, something twisted, something she could no longer ignore. Esperanza. His voice came out lower than he intended, almost swallowed by the noise of the children. Do you believe that sometimes people can come back? The neighbor frowned, but not with disdain. His eyes, marked by decades of prayers and candles on saints, shone with a curiosity that Yolanda did not expect. Back like, Mija? Esperanza adjusted the market bags on her arm, approaching as if they shared a secret. Do you talk about penalty souls? Or from? He lowers his voice even more, almost in a whisper. Reincarnation? The word echoed between them as a shot. Yolanda felt his heart trigger. It was not superstition what haunted it, it was something more concrete, more cruel. But before he could answer, Luciana appeared running, the curls disheveled by the wind, the backpack swinging on the back. Mommy! He shouted, throwing himself in his arms with a force that almost unbalanced her. Today Aunt Marissa said that tomorrow we will make cupcakes. Yolanda hugged her with an intensity that made the girl move away, surprised. Are you okay, Mom? Luciana touched her face, the cold little fingers like ice. You're pale. Yes, my love, he lied, running his hand through his daughter's hair, as if he could erase the memories that lived there. Are we going home? Esperanza watched them with a penetrating look, as if to see beyond the words. Before saying goodbye, he held Yolanda's arm with an unexpected force. Mija, he murmured, so low that only she could hear. If it's serious, go talk to Don Evaristo. He knows things that. He made the sign of the cross. That we should not know. Don Evaristo? Yolanda repeated, confused. The old man of the stationery at the corner of Bolivar Street. The one who sells candles and cleans. Esperanza lowered her voice even more. They say he talked to those who are gone. Yolanda felt a chill through his spine. Not in Santos, not prayer, but in a man who did business with death. Thank you, he said dryly, already pulling Luciana by the hand. But as they walked back to the apartment, Esperanza's phrase hammered in his mind, he knows things we shouldn't know. And for the first time, Yolanda wondered if he wanted to know. Or if some truths were like the rubble of the San Rafael Tower, better leave them buried. Yolanda felt her throat dry as if she had swallowed sand. Those eyes deep, marked by decades of undressed tears, stared at her with an intensity that made her doubt of every word that had rehearsed on the way. But there was no return. Not after seeing her daughter acknowledges a face she should never have seen. Not after hearing a 5-year-old describing details that not even she, adult, knew. Madam. Her voice shot, but if she firmly, everything would crumble. I know this will sound crazy. But accurate. What you hear me to the end. The woman crossed her arms over her chest, as if instinctively protected herself from what was coming. He said nothing, just waited, with the patience of those who had already heard all the possible forms of bad news. My name is Yolanda Herrera. He paused, looking for the right words between fear and urgency. I live in Iztapalapa, with my husband and my daughter, Luciana. She is 5 years old. Esperanza Vasquez's eyes, yes, it had to be her, Teresa's mother narrowly narrowed. Not out of suspicion, but for something deeper, as if the child's name had echoed somewhere forgotten from his memory. A few weeks ago, my daughter started to have memories. Yolanda pulled the bag with trembling hands and took the yellowish photocopy of the sketch. She recognized this photo. He said it was hers. That was Teresa. The followed silence was so dense that Yolanda could hear her own blood throbbing in her ears. Esperanza did not touch the paper. Not at the beginning. He just stared at him, as if he were a ghost materialized in his hands. "This is my daughter's sketch," he murmured finally. His voice did not train. It was firm, but empty, as if the words had been said by someone who had already cried all the possible tears. Teresa Morales. She worked at the San Rafael building. Died in the '85 earthquake. I know, Yolanda swallowed hard. My daughter knows too. She described the navy dress that you mentioned. The first day of work. The colleagues. The morning invoices. His voice broke. She even knows that you kept a butterfly silver brooch that belonged to your grandmother. Esperanza's face stuffed. It was not possible. No one knew that brooch. Not even Evaristo, her husband, who had died 2 years earlier, taking with him the last secrets of the daughter they lost. Except. "Bet in," he said abruptly, taking a step back. The house smelled the cinnamon and beeswax, as if the time inside had stopped in 1985. On the walls, framed photos of a young woman with shy smile and bright eyes, Teresa at different ages, frozen in the eternity of 20-2 years. Yolanda felt a knot in his throat when he saw the resemblance, the same shape of the nose, the curve of the lips, to the way the fringe fell on his forehead. It was Luciana. He was his daughter, looking at her from inside those images. "Sit down," Esperanza pointed to a sofa covered with a faded crochet. "And tell me everything." Yolanda obeyed. And for the first time since that story began, let the words flow without fear. He spoke of the photo, the impossible details, the way Luciana had looked at the sketch as if looking at a mirror. He spoke of Carlos's fear, of the nights in course, the feeling that something or someone was trying to tell him something through his own daughter. When he finished, Esperanza didn't cry. It only held the butterfly silver brooch, spinning it slowly, as if he could unravel the mystery that no religion, no science, no logic could explain. "My daughter had a birthmark here," she played slightly below the left collarbone. "A small crescent moon stain. The doctors said it was rare." Yolanda felt the world turn. Because Luciana had exactly the same brand. In the same place. And no one but her and Carlos, knew that. The door opened even before Luciana touched the bell. And when the girl came in, Esperanza released a stuffy scream, as if she had seen a ghost materialize before her eyes. It was not just the resemblance in the features, it was the way Luciana leaned her head when smiling, the way her fingers played with the blue dress bar, identical to what Teresa wore in the photo about Repisa. It was as if time has doubled over himself, bringing back what the earthquake had taken. "Mama!" Luciana whispered, her eyes fixed on the altar. It was not a question, nor a recognition. It was something deeper, as if a sleeping memory had been awakened by the smell of Alia's coffee, the sound of the voices that echoed in the room, by the presence of that woman whose face, although aged by pain, was strangely familiar to her. Esperanza fell to his knees. Not for weakness, but for a mixture of terror and sacred ecstasy, as if they were in the face of a miracle that did not dare to name. His lips moved in a silent prayer as the tears dripped unliquidated. Stunned, Carlos tried to hold Yolanda by the arm, but she was already kneeling next to Luciana, her trembling hands holding her daughter as if she feared she could disappear at any moment. Tearisting. Esperanza reached out, without touching, as if contact could break the charm. "Iris tu, mi Nina?" Luciana did not respond with words. Instead, he walked slowly to the altar, his light steps like those of someone who knows every inch of that floor. He stopped before Teresa's photo, and then, as if moved by a force beyond herself, she reached out and touched the golden heart that hung from Esperanza's hand. "This is mine," he said, with a certainty that he didn't belong to a 5-year-old child. "I lost him the day he toured it all. The following silence was so dense that it seemed possible to cut it with a knife. Carlos swallowed hard, his eyes jumping between his daughter, kneeling wife, and necklace that Luciana now holds on her chest, as if he were a lost piece of her own soul. Dios mío, Esperanza covered her mouth with her hands. Dios mío, Ella. Yolanda could not breathe. It was not possible. It couldn't be. And yet, there was Luciana, with the golden heart pressed against the skin, just about the growing moon-shaped brand, the same brand Teresa had. The same brand that no genetics could explain. Mama, Luciana turned to Yolanda, her eyes shining with a frightening lucidity. I remember now. I worked upstairs, and when the earth began to tremble, I ran. But I couldn't get out in time. And then, so I flew. Esperanza sobbed, as if those words had torn a wound that had never healed. Eso was so that she sig rep decreed, he murmured, between tears. That si algún día died in a temper, su soul was converted to moth to tener miedo never bad. Yolanda looked at the silver pendant in his own hands, the spinning butterfly spinned, as if alive. And then understood. It was not a jewel. It was an answer. One that the universe had dropped on your lap as a challenge, believe it now? That moment suspended in time seemed to have been fabric by divine hands. Yolanda's husband, still with his face marked by the confusion that faded in amazement, watched the scene as if the floor had opened under his feet. But Luciana, her Luciana, was still on the sidewalk, her eyes fixed in the blue house as if every board, every window, every crack on the wall whisper her name in a forgotten tongue. It was the look of those who recognize not a place, but a belonging. And then, with a voice that seemed to come far beyond those 5 years of life, she murmured. Mommy, why do you get the house? The words fell like stones in a serene lake, creating waves that shook the air. Carlos turned to Yolanda, his eyes wide in search of an explanation she could not give, not logical, not science, not with anything he knew. But Yolanda just nodded slowly, as if confirmed something that has burned on her chest weeks ago. She knew. He knew from the first nightmare, from the pendant that spinned alone in his hands, from the way the daughter spoke of tremors with a familiarity that would froze the blood. And then she appeared. Esperanza emerged from the umbril of the door as if they were part of his own house, as if his wrinkles were the cracks of the walls, his dress faded the paint that time had erased. Her eyes met Luciana's, and something inside her, something old and painful, left. The wrinkled hands flew to the chest, as if the heart could jump out at any time. A hiccup escaped from his lips even before the word. Teresa. Luciana raised her face. And in this gesture, in the way his eyes illuminated as candles lit in the darkness, there was no doubt. There was no room for skepticism, for coincidences, for the coldness of reason. She knew. Ran. He let go of Carlos' hand as if that touch was a burden, as if only that woman's arms could contain the weight of an interrupted life. And when he threw herself against Esperanza, when her small fingers nailed the ancianians' curved backs, when their crying mingled in a lament that seemed echoed. From decades ago, the world stopped. Mommy, I extreme a lot, Luciana whispered, her face pressed against Esperanza's dress, the words drowned out by the damp fabric of tears. I wanted to come back with you, you mandarin me with the personal benas, so that you take care of me. Esperanza lifted her in her arms as if she weighed nothing, as if carrying not a child, but the past, light and painful at the same time. And as she entered the house, while Luciana looked around with a reverent astonishment, recognizing every corner as if she had left him yesterday, Carlos remained paralyzed. Your daughter. Your 5-year-old daughter. Hugging a stranger as if it were his own mother. Speaking of a life that wasn't hers. Remembering a home I had never known. Until Luciana pointed to Repisa. Mi alter, he said, his voice shaking with emotion. Everyone arrested velocadores for medium? Esperanza could not answer. The tears dripped unmortally, and his hands trembled as he caressed the girl's hair. All of them, mi Nina. All of them. And then Luciana loosened. He walked straight to a ajar door, as if his feet remembered the way. A simple question, loaded with eternity. Do you see mi cuarto? The silence that followed was sacred. That room, intact for decades, was a sanctuary. The bed with faded pink quilt. The player with the framed mirror, where time had left his mark in each stripe. The photos covered with photos of a young woman who smiled at the camera as if she knew that one day she would come back. Luciana went straight to the first drawer. He opened it with the confidence of those who had done so 1,000 times. "Dowell, is it me, caller?" he asked, rolling between objects urgently. "El del Corazonito." Esperanza took the same necklace from her pocket she had shown Yolanda hours earlier. The same as Yola had held between his fingers, feeling him pulsate like a living heart. "This collar, me love," said, the voice broken. Luciana recognized him even before touching him. His eyes filled with a glow that was not just joy, but memory. He reached out his small hands, shaking. "See? Nini collar favorite. Lo lu regast cuando I worked work. Decia that would give me suerte." Esperanza put him on his neck with fingers that trembled like leaves in the wind. The dije rested over Luciana's skin as if he had always been there. As if waited, patient, for this exact moment. "Why do not meet cuando if cayo el edificio, mommy?" asked the girl, caressing the metal tenderly. Esperanza smiled through her tears. "In the sea, mi Nina. At a time, stabs waiting for what they return. A veces, al awakening con el sol filtranos in between las curtains, Yolanda is up to her all happy being a sueño tejido by el dolor y la nostalgia." Pero besides Sustums if he posed on the small altar of La Sala, or photographs of Teresa y Hope, Jobines y Sonrientes, comparsion elmi milestone of tall. Las fresh flowers that Luciana puts each week, she aroma the copal that on impregnates los rinchones de la casa, and the way she is lula la late cariciaba el rostro de la nina as he supires something that los demás ignores, no era suno. It was a milagro written with tears ink y fe, a milagro that breathes his side every noche, which rea the crystalline laughing of Teresa of Sorprendia. Signs thinking about all so that paso? He preaches Carlos with frecuencia, mientras el vapor del café is entangled between sus fingers. Sus ojos, formerly frios and calculators, ahora brillaban by una chispa that Yolanda en reconoce. "It was la misma mirada that I have the first time, habig to Luciana in the sus brazos y la nina, from only 3 años, la susurro papa, in the tengasmito. Yo ya conoce. All of it," said Yolanda, removing el azucar with lentitud. "Pero ya no es una herida abierta. Ahora and how to remember a wide abrazo, one of ess the Dayon el Sol templed. Carlos había cambiado. El hombre that formerly the world of the world con reglas and numbers ahora hablaba of intertwined destinations and promises that trascendan la piel. In the había religious vuelto, I would make it brought that los santos and los altars were spiritual spirit pero accompanies the hope for the misa los domingos, not by ablution, bell because it was understood that hay truths that in the head in formulas. Una afternoon, mientra. Watched Luciana run between the swings of the park, chasing butterflies as if they knew they were messengers. Carlos confessed to Yolanda what was most shocked. "What I can't get out of my head is that she not only remembered Teresa, she remembered having chosen to return. As if love were a magnet so powerful that even death could resist." It was true. In each conversation, in each drawing with crayons where Mama Yolanda, Papi Carlos appeared in a figure with a blue dress that Luciana called me before, the girl insisted on the same thing: you needed a lot of love, and I had a lot of saved. That's why I came. It was not the fantasy of lonely childhood, it was the quiet certainty of who knows that he has crossed an invisible bridge. Esperanza was no longer the visit of Sundays. It was Grandmother Teresa, as Luciana had renamed her the day that, pointing out an old photo, he exclaimed, "I am with your hair, Abu." I knew her tastes before the girl discovered them, the horror of the childs in Nagata, they bite like hell. Teresa said, and Luciana made an identical grimace when trying them, the obsession to collect bright stones in her pockets, the way of frowning when they lied, as if the deception hurt physically. One afternoon, while kneading the dough for the tamales, Esperanza confessed to Yolanda between laughs and tears. "Anoche, Luciana told me that Teresa didn't leave. That only changed rooms. That now lives here," he touched his chest, "but that she is still her. And I, Yolanda, at 70 years, I am learning that death is like taking away a heavy coat, one remains the same, only lighter. Specific memories had vanished, such as ink in the rain. Luciana no longer talked about files tied with red ribbon or the smell of burned coffee in the offices of the San Rafael Tower. But the essential had been recorded in his being, the way he clung to hope in the storms, as if he knew that thunder were echoes of an ancient fear, the wisdom with which he comforted his companions of the kinder, as if he had lived enough losses to understand that pain is only relieved with tenderness. "She is a special girl," said teacher Patricia A. Yolanda in a meeting, in a trembling voice. Today, Martin cried because he missed his dad. Luciana hugged him and whispered, "Don't worry, he is only in the room next door." One afternoon, while Luciana painted a sun with rays too long for her leaf, Yolanda sat next to her and asked, with her heart in her throat, "My love, do you still remember when you were Teresa?" The girl looked up. His eyes, which had once reflected the panic of those who drowned between two worlds, now shone serene, like lakes under the moon. "I don't remember the details, Mommy," he said, choosing a purple pencil. "But I remember the important." "What is the important thing?" asked Yolanda, containing his breath. Luciana left the pencil and took her mother's hands. His small fingers, still stained with paint, closed around Yolanda's with unexpected force. "That love doesn't break. That when you really love someone, even if he leaves, he always finds the way back. That is why God sent me with you," he added, approaching to kiss Yolanda's cheek. "Because you needed to know that love is stronger than everything, until dying." That night, Yolanda wrote her daughter's words in the leather diary she kept key. Each page was a testimony, dates, phrases, everyday miracles. "I knew that one day, when the skepticism of the world tried to erase its history, those lines would be proof that the impossible sometimes dresses in normality and walks between us, taking chamomile tea and leaving traces of light." On September 19, 2024, 30-9 years after the day the ground opened under the feet of a city, the Herrera family, Yolanda, Carlos, Luciana, and Esperanza, stopped in front of the place where the San Rafael Tower once rose. Now it was a small park, with wooden banks and a bronze monument where the names of the disappeared shone under the sun. Luciana, with her yellow dress and the braids that Esperanza had made that morning, deposited a Sempasiquil bouquet at the foot of the plate. Then, he closed his eyes and muttered something that only the wind could carry. "What did you say, my life?" asked Hope, drying a fleeting tear. "Thank you," Luciana replied, smiling. "Thanks for letting me return." On the return subway, while the city paraded after fogged crystals, Luciana fell asleep on Yolanda's shoulder. Esperanza, sitting in front of them, watched them with a smile that illuminated more than the blinking lights of the car. "Do you know what I think, Yolanda?" he whispered, as if he was afraid to wake up the girl. "I think my Teresa fulfilled her promise. Not only did he come back to tell us that love does not die. He came back to show it to us. So that we knew that families are not lost, they only change shape. That miracles are not things that happen to people, but things that people do when they love enough." Carlos, who until then had remained silent, nodded. His eyes, reflecting the lights of the city that spread like a mantle of fallen stars, shone with a new certainty. "And he also taught us something else," he said, squeezing Yolanda's hand. "That we are more than this body, more than these years counted. That there is something in us, his chest, that neither earthquakes, nor time, nor death can be dragged." Today, Luciana is 6 years old. At school, the other children call her La Nina del Milagro, although for her teachers she is simply the student who always shares her snack and who, on rainy days, looks at the sky as if waiting for greetings. But for those who really know her, for whom they have seen how her little hands cradle the face of hope with the same tenderness with which Teresa did it decades ago, she is something else. It is the living proof that love does not give up, that the souls that are recognized find the way to return, even if she has to dress in childhood, new laughter, and a heart necklace that waited almost 40 years to beat again. The nights at the Herrera house are calm. Sometimes, when silence becomes complicit, Esperanza leans towards Yolanda and asks, pointing to Luciana, who sleeps hugged her teddy bear, "Do you think Teresa was the only one who returned?" And Yolanda, observing how her daughter's chest goes up and down with the peace of who knows that she is exactly where she should be, always responds the same. "I think love always finds a way to return home. Because this is not just the story of a girl who remembered another life. It is the story that true love knows borders, or time, not even death. It is proof that, when two souls are chosen, the universe conspires to meet, even if you have to invent miracles.